So the second part of our session, as you all know, deals with some common misconception or some common area which has become a sort of an enigma in the Muslim world, and younger generation maybe, or even our adults, are at times at loss to find out the correct interpretation or to be convinced as to what the correct interpretation is. So today I'm going to speak about halal food and the zabiha issue, which is so rampant in the West, of course, and many areas in which the halal food is not available. Of course, all of you know why. You know that the prohibition of halal food. I'm not going to elaborate on that. My area in which I'm going to talk about today is that how can you convince your children, your grown-up children, or people who are around you who could be non-Muslims, who would like to know that why do Muslims abstain from non-halal meat? So, you see, what we need to understand is that it's not mere doing something or not doing something that we should undertake when we study Islam. We must always find out the wisdom behind what we are asked to do and what we are stopped from doing. So my submission in this regard is that if you have to teach your children or answer a non-Muslim colleague or a friend who might be around you as to why Muslims are so sensitive regarding non-halal food, that they would not eat non-halal food, or maybe your children ask you this, that why is Islam so adamant, so persistent in a country in which halal food is not, although today I know that it's readily available all over the US, in many other countries as well, but still there are areas in which this is not very commonly available, not generally available. And even if it is available, children do ask that why does Islam insist and emphasize so much on halal food? So I'm going to take up this question and try to explain to you what I have learned from my teachers and from various books which have explained the Quranic directive of slaughtering and of sacrifice, animal sacrifice. So let me start off by saying that, you see, as far as human life is concerned, you and I and everyone acknowledges that there is not a question, it's out of question that we can take the life of any human being, except of course in certain conditions, and that too by the state authorities. For example, if you've killed a person or you have caused some other harm, then a life for a life is an option only when a person has killed someone, and we ourselves cannot kill any human being ourselves. We have to take our case to the courts of justice, and they will give this punishment. Apart from that, you see, the sanctity which human life holds is such that we cannot take that life. But the point that I'm trying to make is that human life is beyond any question that it cannot be taken. Now let's move a step ahead, and that is, according to the Quran, the life of an animal is also sacred. It cannot be taken. Life itself is such a thing that it cannot be taken unless you have permission from God. So in the case of human beings, you had this permission only when he killed someone else. For example, if a person kills someone, only then you have the permission from God to kill that other person in qisas, if that person or his heirs, if that person's heirs do not forgive that person, and certain other conditions as well. In a similar case, in a similar vein, we cannot take the life of an animal as well, unless we are permitted by God. And when we say Bismillah Allahu Akbar, when we slaughter that person, either through a machine or through a knife or through any other means, when we say Bismillah Allahu Akbar, we are actually exercising that permission from God, that we are now allowed to take the life of an animal. I think all of us would have been vegetarians, or most of us would have been vegetarians, if in a normal course of our lives, we would think that why should we take the life of an animal for our own pleasure? Most of us who are sensitive would have sufficed or remain content with eating pulses or vegetable or fish, or maybe not even fish but certain vegetables, because why should they take the life of an animal? It is only the Almighty's permission, His behest, that we exercise when we say Bismillah Allahu Akbar, and that is what makes an animal halal. In other words, non-halal animals are animals on which the name of God has not been taken at the time of slaughter. And when that name has not been taken, it actually amounts to the fact that we have not been permitted by God to take that life. So it's like expressing the fact that the life of an animal is also very sacred. It's also very special, just as a human life is. And just in the case of human life, we can only take it if we kill another person. In case of an animal, we can only take that animal's life if we have pronounced Bismillah Allahu Akbar, which is called takbir. And that takbir signifies the permission of God. So I think we need to understand that non-halal meat or non-zabiha meat is not something of a mere directive that has been given by God. It has certain implications. It has wisdom behind it. It has a certain reasoning behind it. And that wisdom and that reasoning is that the life of an animal, we are not authorized to take that life. We cannot take that life unless we pronounce Bismillah Allahu Akbar, because in that case we will be doing something which we have not been permitted to. So when I try to explain this to my students or to people whom I come across who might have a question as to why Islam insists on halal meat, I always give them this example that it's the sanctity of animal life, what to speak of human life. Even animal life is sacred to us unless we say Bismillah Allahu Akbar, because it is in the Quran that the Almighty says that He has created these animals for our consumption. And had I not found verses to this effect in the Quran, I think most of us would have been vegetarians, because being sensitive individuals, we might not have even eaten, because we would be thinking that we are taking the life of an animal for our own pleasure. So it is only the Almighty's permission, which is expressed in the form of that takbir at the time of slaughter, that gives me the courage and gives me the confidence that the Almighty has given me this permission to take the life of that animal and use his meat for my consumption. So I think this is an area in which we need to discuss more, with our children, with our colleagues or other people, because you see, as I always have tried to stress, that to teach religion, our religion is not an amalgam, not a mixture of do's and don'ts. Not merely that. Every do and every don't has a wisdom behind it. If we are asked to pray or go to Hajj, or for example certain other directives, or each directive of Islam has some wisdom, has some purpose behind it. And if we teach our children the purpose behind a directive, I think we will be educating them. We'll be opening up their minds to discussion. We'll be telling them why Islam or why religion wants them to follow a certain routine in life. We will encourage questions from them. And of course, we have to be in a position to answer them as well. So in a nutshell, what I'm saying is that as far as slaughtering is concerned, this is the reason behind it. And let us make this a habit of ours, that for each question that we are asked to do something or not do something, we'll try to find out why. Because this why educates us on the reason, on the wisdom of the Almighty. And here this big why is explained by the fact that the Bismillah and Allahu Akbar part, with which we slaughter an animal, is the part which gives us this courage, this confidence, and this permission that we can take the life of an animal. You should not treat taking life to be easy. So, you see, what Islam actually wants to instill in us is the sanctity of life, whether it's human or it's non-human, it's animal life. It says both lives are sanctimonious, both are sacred. The exception is when God tells us that we can take a life of a person when he kills another person, and of course that too by state authorities. And in the case of animals, when we need them for our own consumption, and that too because we have asked God. So I'm just going to end the second part here. It's a short one, and it's meant for your own consumption as well. If you have questions regarding it, I'll be very obliged to answer them. But let us also make this commitment to ourselves that as far as the directives of Islam are concerned, we will teach our children the wisdom behind each directive. We'll educate them behind the wisdom, because that is the way in which they're going to really either adopt that directive or question you further to make them convinced that why should they follow a particular directive.